Please subscribe to the channel to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. The vast darkness of space stretched out before us, an infinite ocean dotted by the cold, distant gleam of stars. The Odyssey, our home and laboratory for the next few years, glided silently through the void, propelled by ionic engines that whispered a constant song of contained energy. I, Dr. Nathaniel Graves, astrophysicist and scientific leader of the mission, felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. We were on our way to a cosmic anomaly, a gravitational distortion detected several light weeks from Earth, a phenomenon that defied all known explanations. On board, the crew shared this ambivalent feeling. Dr. Amelia Turner, biologist and astrobiologist, with her sharp gaze and restrained smile, analyzed the preliminary data with contagious enthusiasm, searching for signs of life, however improbable. Captain Elias Ward, a space veteran, with his rigid posture and stern gaze, kept the ship on course, his deep and firm voice conveying unwavering confidence, even in the face of the unknown. Dr. Leonidas Leo Crane, theoretical physicist and the most eccentric of the group, chattered incessantly about hidden dimensions and alternate realities, his theories bordering on science fiction. And finally, Mara King, our navigation systems operator, a talented and intuitive young woman with a mysterious gaze that seemed to see beyond the veil of reality. The first weeks of the journey passed without incident. The routine on board was established, punctuated by shared meals in the dining hall, exercise sessions in the gravitational gym, scientific meetings in the laboratory, and long hours of observation on the panoramic deck. Communication with Earth was strong and stable, messages from our families and colleagues arriving with reassuring regularity. However, as we approached our destination, small glitches began to appear. First, a temperature sensor showed erratic readings, then an air recycling system temporarily failed, and finally, an inexplicable fluctuation in the main reactor's energy levels. Nothing serious, nothing that couldn't be fixed, but enough to cause a murmur of concern among the crew. Mara, in particular, seemed affected by these anomalies. I often observed her at the command post, her long, agile fingers sliding over the holographic controls, her gaze fixed on the monitors displaying the ship's complex web of data. Sometimes she would frown, as if seeing something that disturbed her, something that shouldn't be there. "Everything okay, Mara?" I asked, approaching her on one of these occasions. She startled, turning to me with a jolt. "Yes, Dr. Graves," she replied, her voice slightly hesitant. "Just a little tired, I think." "You've been working a lot," I said with a smile. "Make sure to get some rest." She nodded, but her gaze remained distant, lost somewhere beyond the ship's walls, beyond the stars, beyond reality itself. Finally, we arrived. The region where the anomaly had been detected revealed itself to us, not as a visual spectacle, but as an absence. Our sensors, calibrated to detect the subtlest variations in the fabric of space-time, registered nothing. It was as if a piece of the universe had been erased. "Where is it?" asked Captain Ward, his voice tense. "I don't see anything." "It's there, Captain," I replied, pointing to a specific point in the void. "But it's invisible to our conventional sensors. It's as if it's hidden." Leo, with a feverish gleam in his eyes, began to speak about the possibility that the anomaly was a black hole, but not an ordinary black hole. "An inverted black hole," he said, his voice excited. "A portal to another dimension." His words provoked a mix of disbelief and fascination in the crew. The idea of an invisible black hole, a portal to the unknown, was both terrifying and irresistibly attractive. It was the promise of a discovery that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe, that could rewrite the laws of physics. We decided to approach cautiously, using the ship's manual thrusters. As we neared the anomaly, the sense of strangeness increased. Time seemed to behave irregularly, speeding up and slowing down unpredictably. The ship's instruments began to show increasingly erratic readings. Communication systems failed intermittently, and the crew was overcome by a growing sense of unease, a subtle but persistent nausea. "We're losing contact with Earth," Mara announced, her voice tense. "The messages are distorted, incomprehensible." Captain Ward, visibly disturbed, ordered us to abort the approach. "This is madness," he said. "We're entering unknown territory without knowing what awaits us. We need to retreat, regroup, reassess." But it was too late. The ship, as if with a will of its own, continued to advance, irresistibly drawn to the center of the anomaly. The controls were unresponsive, the engines seemed to have lost power, and the Odyssey was inexorably sucked into the void. Panic began to spread among the crew. Shouts, contradictory orders, the metallic sound of falling objects. Chaos reigned on board. I clung to one of the command deck's chairs, trying to stay calm, trying to understand what was happening. And then, amidst the chaos, I saw it. A distortion in space, a subtle ripple, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing. And through that rift, I glimpsed something indescribable, incomprehensible, something that defied all the laws of physics, all the laws of sanity. It was a glimpse of the infinite, a glimpse of the abyss. And in that moment, I knew that our journey had only just begun. The mystery of the black hole was merely the gateway to a horror I could never have imagined. The Odyssey, once a symbol of human exploration, had now become a plaything in the hands of cosmic forces, a prelude to the madness that was to come. Choafus, Odyssey, now a helpless cork in a cosmic maelstrom, continued its inexorable descent towards the invisible anomaly. The panic on the bridge had subsided, replaced by a heavy, suffocating dread. We were scientists, explorers, trained to observe, to analyze, to understand. But what we were facing defied understanding. It was a descent into the unknown, a journey into a realm where the familiar laws of physics seemed to unravel. Captain Ward, his face a mask of grim determination, attempted to regain control of the ship, issuing orders in a voice that strained to maintain its usual authority. But the controls remained unresponsive, the engines sputtered uselessly, and the Odyssey continued its helpless drift. Amelia, her usual calm demeanor shattered, clung to her workstation, her knuckles white, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Leo, on the other hand, was ecstatic. He bounced on the balls of his feet, his eyes gleaming with an almost manic intensity, muttering about dimensional breaches and transcendental realities. "We're going through, Nathaniel," he exclaimed, his voice a breathless whisper. "We're actually going through. This is beyond anything we could have imagined." I couldn't share his enthusiasm. I felt a cold knot of fear tightening in my stomach, a sense of impending doom that I couldn't shake. This wasn't a scientific breakthrough. It was a catastrophe. We were being pulled into something else, something that defied our understanding, something that felt inherently wrong. Mara, however, was the most unsettling. She sat hunched in her navigation station, her body trembling, her eyes fixed on the main view screen, which now displayed only a swirling vortex of distorted colors and impossible geometries. She was muttering to herself, her voice low and guttural, her words unintelligible. "Mara," I said, approaching her cautiously, "are you all right?" She didn't respond. She didn't even seem to notice my presence. She was completely lost in her own world, a world of visions and whispers. As we drew closer to the center of the anomaly, the distortions intensified. The ship groaned and creaked under the strain. The lights flickered erratically, and the air grew thick with a strange metallic tang. The feeling of nausea increased, accompanied by a growing sense of disorientation, as if our minds were being stretched, twisted, pulled in multiple directions. "We need to get out of here," Captain Ward shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "We need to... His words were cut short by a sudden, violent lurch. The Odyssey was slammed sideways, as if struck by an invisible force. Alarms blared, sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the crew was thrown from their feet. I slammed against a wall, my head hitting the metal with a sickening thud. I saw stars, a kaleidoscope of pain and disorientation. And then, darkness. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on the floor, my head throbbing, my body aching. The alarms were still blaring, the lights were still flickering, but the ship was stable. Relatively stable, at least. I struggled to my feet, my legs unsteady, my vision blurry. I looked around, trying to assess the situation. The bridge was a mess. Debris was scattered everywhere, consoles were sparking, and several crew members were lying unconscious on the floor. Amelia was already up, tending to the injured, her face pale but determined. Captain Ward was slumped in his chair, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. Leo was nowhere to be seen. What happened? I asked, my voice slurred. We went through, Amelia said, her voice trembling. We're somewhere else. Looked at the main view screen, and my blood ran cold. We were no longer in space, at least not in any space that I recognized. The view screen showed a landscape that was both alien and terrifying. The sky was a swirling vortex of colors that defied description, a chaotic blend of purple, green, and something else. Something that seemed to shimmer and shift just beyond the limits of my perception. The ground was a jagged, uneven expanse of black, crystalline rock stretching out to a horizon that seemed to curve in impossible ways. There were no stars, no sun, no moon. Just the swirling, chaotic sky and the things that moved within it. Shadowy shapes, vast and indistinct, flitted across the alien sky, their forms shifting and changing, their movements defying any sense of natural law. They were like nightmares given form, like the fevered dreams of a mad god. Where are we? I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know, Amelia said, her voice equally hushed, but it's not our universe. We had crossed the threshold. We had entered the realm of Nyx. Or perhaps Nyx had entered us. The line between reality and nightmare had blurred, and the Odyssey, our vessel of exploration, had become a prison, a cage, adrift in a sea of cosmic horror. The first visit had been involuntary, a terrifying plunge into the unknown, and it left us stranded, broken, and utterly, profoundly lost. The familiar comfort of science, of logic, of reason, had been stripped away, leaving us naked and vulnerable, before the face of an incomprehensible reality. The alien landscape outside the Odyssey was not merely a visual phenomenon, it was a presence. It pressed against the hull of the ship, against our minds, a suffocating weight of otherness. The silence, broken only by the intermittent sparking of damaged consoles and the shallow breathing of the injured, was more terrifying than any roar. It was the silence of a universe that didn't care, a universe that was fundamentally, intrinsically hostile. We managed to get Captain Ward back to his quarters, his condition stable but precarious. Amelia, drawing on her medical training, did what she could for the other injured crew members, but her resources were limited, and her own strength was waning. I tried to focus on the practical, on the immediate tasks at hand. I checked the ship's systems, attempting to assess the damage, to find some way, any way, to regain control. But the task was hopeless. The Odyssey was crippled, its systems corrupted, its navigation meaningless. We were adrift, not in space, but in somewhere else. Leo, I discovered, had not been injured. He had, in fact, disappeared. During the transition, I found him in the observation deck, pressed against the panoramic viewport, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and elation. Nathaniel, he whispered, without turning around. Look, just look. I joined him at the viewport, and I saw it. It wasn't a creature, not in any conventional sense. It was a distortion, a flaw in the fabric of reality, a place where the already alien landscape seemed to fold in on itself, to twist and contort in ways that defied geometry, that defied comprehension. And within that distortion, I saw movement, shapes, colors, patterns, shifting, changing, swirling, forming fleeting images that my mind struggled to grasp, to categorize, to understand. It's beautiful, Leo whispered, his voice filled with awe. It's the truth. I felt a surge of anger, a desperate need to shake him out of his delusion. It's madness, Leo, I said, my voice harsh. It's going to kill us. He finally turned to look at me, his eyes shining with an unnatural light. No, Nathaniel, he said, a strange smile playing on his lips. It's going to free us from the limitations of our petty reality. He turned back to the viewport, his gaze fixed on the thing that was out there. He was lost, I realized. Lost to the influence of this place, of this entity. I left him there, in his self-imposed exile from reality, and returned to the bridge. Mara was still at her station, her body rigid, her eyes locked on the main view screen, which now displayed only a chaotic jumble of static and distorted images. Mara, I said, my voice gentle. Can you hear me? She didn't respond. She didn't even blink. I reached out to touch her shoulder, but I hesitated. I felt a reluctance, a fear of contamination, as if touching her would somehow connect me to whatever it was that had taken hold of her. I retreated, leaving her in her trance, a prisoner of her own mind, a victim of the presence that was all around us. Time, in that place, had no meaning. It stretched and compressed, accelerated and decelerated in ways that were both disorienting and terrifying. Hours could feel like minutes, and minutes could feel like an eternity. The crew, those who were still conscious, began to deteriorate. Their conversations became disjointed, their movements erratic, their eyes filled with a growing emptiness. They were losing their grip on reality, slipping into madness, succumbing to the influence of the alien landscape, of the entity that inhabited it. Amelia, despite her best efforts, was also affected. She became withdrawn, silent, her usual optimism replaced by a haunted, distant look. She spent most of her time in her quarters, staring at the wall, her hands trembling. I tried to hold on, to maintain my focus, to resist. But it was a losing battle. The presence was too strong, too pervasive, too insidious. It seeped into my thoughts, twisted my emotions, distorted my perceptions. I started to see things that couldn't be real, things that defied logic, things that shouldn't exist. Flickering shadows in the corners of my vision, fleeting glimpses of things moving just beyond the range of my perception. Whispers in the silence, voices that spoke in a language I didn't understand, but that somehow resonated within me. I started to doubt my own sanity. Was I imagining things? Was I hallucinating? Or was this real? The line between reality and nightmare had blurred, and I was losing my ability to distinguish between the two. The Odyssey, once a symbol of human ingenuity and exploration, had become a floating asylum, a prison for our minds, a sacrifice to the cosmic horror that we had unwittingly unleashed. The loss of reality was not a sudden event, but a gradual erosion, a slow, insidious creep of madness that consumed us, one by one, leaving us stranded in a realm where the laws of physics and the boundaries of sanity had ceased to exist. And I, the scientist, the rationalist, the explorer, was left with nothing but the chilling certainty that we were doomed, utterly and irrevocably, to be consumed by the echoes of Nyx. The Odyssey was no longer a ship, it was a tomb, a floating sarcophagus, drifting through a reality that was actively hostile to human comprehension. The corridors were silent, save for the occasional scuttling sound, the source of which I preferred not to contemplate. The crew, what was left of them, were little more than ghosts, hollow shells of their former selves, their minds shattered by the relentless assault of Nyx. Amelia had retreated completely into herself. I found her curled up in a fetal position in her quarters, her eyes wide and unseeing, her lips moving in a silent, constant murmur. She didn't recognize me. She didn't recognize anything. Leo, on the other hand, had embraced the madness. He roamed the ship, his clothing torn, his hair matted, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. He spoke in riddles and rhymes, his words a jumble of scientific jargon and something else, something ancient and unsettling. He had become a prophet of Nyx, a herald of the end. Mara was gone. I found her station empty, her chair overturned, her personal belongings scattered on the floor. The main view screen, once a window to the universe, now displayed only a swirling vortex of colors, a chaotic representation of the thing that was out there. She had either succumbed completely to its influence, or she had found a way out. I didn't know which was worse. I was alone, the last vestige of sanity in a world gone mad. But even my sanity was fraying. The whispers had become voices, the shadows had become forms, and the line between reality and hallucination had vanished completely. I found myself drawn back to the observation deck, to the viewport that offered a glimpse into the abyss. The distortion was still there, larger now, more defined, and within it I saw her Nyx. Not a creature, not a being, but a force, a fundamental aspect of this reality, a presence that permeated everything, that shaped everything, that consumed everything. She was beautiful, in a terrifying, incomprehensible way. A swirling vortex of colors, of shapes, of possibilities. A symphony of chaos, a dance of destruction, a promise of oblivion. And she was speaking to me. Not in words, not in any language that I could understand, but in images, emotions, sensations. She showed me the universe, not as I had known it, but as it truly was. A vast, infinite expanse of nothingness, punctuated by fleeting moments of something. Universes born and dying, galaxies colliding, stars exploding. A cosmic dance of creation and destruction, played out on a scale that dwarfed human comprehension. She showed me the truth. That humanity was insignificant, a fleeting spark in the vastness of eternity, a mistake in the grand scheme of things. That our science, our philosophy, our art were all meaningless, futile attempts to impose order on a universe that was fundamentally, intrinsically chaotic. And she offered me a choice: to resist, to cling to my sanity, to die in this alien realm, alone and forgotten, or to surrender, to embrace the madness, to become a part of the chaos, to merge with Nyx. I looked at my reflection in the viewport, at the haunted, hollow-eyed stranger that stared back at me. I saw the fear, the despair, the longing for like oblivion, the longing to escape, the longing to become something more. I made my choice. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the cold, smooth surface of the viewport. And then, I let go. I surrendered. I embraced the madness. Became Nyx. The Odyssey vanished. Not destroyed, not consumed, but absorbed. It ceased to exist as a separate entity. Its atoms, its molecules, its essence, merging with the swirling chaos of Nyx. And I, Nathaniel Graves, ceased to exist as well. My memories, my emotions, my identity dissolved, dispersed, becoming part of the whole. There was no pain, no fear, no regret, only peace, the peace of oblivion. the peace of nothingness, the peace of nix. The universe, indifferent and vast, continued its relentless expansion. Stars were born, galaxies collided, and universes winked in and out of existence. And somewhere, in a forgotten corner of reality, a single atom, once part of a human being, once part of a ship called Odyssey, drifted through the void, a silent testament to the folly of exploration, to the horror of the unknown. The echoes of Nyx, a symphony of chaos and destruction, resonated through the cosmos, a constant reminder that some doors are best left unopened, some mysteries are best left unsolved. The journey had ended, not with a bang, but with a whisper, a fading sigh of sanity lost to the infinite, uncaring embrace of the cosmic void.